Firecast, a podcast from MDM Publishing, brought to you in association with International Fire Protection Magazine, the global voice for passive and active fire protection.
It's Firecast time again, and today we bring you a global expert in passive fire protection to share his knowledge on the subject, and we'll learn about supporting accurate passive fire protection specification and product certification and the importance of third-party approval and certification. So our guest today is Donald Dippy, who's Head of Technical and Compliance for SideRise, Middle East, India and Asia Pacific. He's an experienced stakeholder-focused technical engineer who specialises in passive fire protection and acoustic solutions for the facades of buildings. With a deep understanding of testing, certification, compliance and regulatory codes, he helps architects, facade consultants and contractors, developers and fire and rescue services navigate the complexities of fire safety in both the new construction and retrofitting of buildings, whilst giving guidance on where there is scope for improving performance levels. So Donald, welcome to the Firecast. Just want to ask, first of all, why is early engagement with passive fire protection providers so important?
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I hope I give justice to all that you've said, actually. In terms of early engagement, the biggest, let's say, the key parameter that is present is flexibility. So if we engage early with an architect in the project stage, then he is flexible to incorporate the proper design or arrangement to enforce a tested arrangement into his project design. So it is important for everyone. We try to do this, to be fair, even though more often than not, it does come that a project is 40% complete and a consultant comes up to SideRise or to us in the Middle East and they ask, what can we do now, Donald? And you're like, you can't do anything properly, can you? So you do what you can do best, but you would prefer if you were given the gung-ho from the beginning itself and you could ensure that your full tested arrangement is enforced.
It sounds blindingly obvious to me, Donald. Yeah. Hope that gets across to everyone listening. What challenges are you seeing in the market then? Apart from that, I mean, I'm thinking around product testing and certification and the level of knowledge out there to interpret them.
Certification bodies are important for the industry. Third-party certification is essential to ensure that what you are tested is accurately represented to the end user or the customer. Yeah. What you have to ensure is, along with the third-party certification, you have to ask, whoever is the stakeholder on a project has to ask for the test report. Now, this is becoming a thing in the UK where by default, the test reports are being requested from manufacturers. However, in the rest of the world out there, it's still not a process or a procedure. And that is something that I'm a little unhappy about, because SideRise are a company that do things the right way, or have integrity in all that we say and we do. But I wish I could say that for everyone out there. Unfortunately, it's not the case. So it's important to assess the test report along with the third-party certification when a project design is being reviewed and it's incorporated into the project. Along with its certification, the third-party certification body also needs to do regular audits in your factory, because that is a process along with the third-party certification which goes ahead. So that's what I would say about third-party certification. In terms of the level of knowledge that you set out there to interpret them, well, fire engineers and fire consultants do have sufficient knowledge out there. However, contractors and facade consultants maybe are not at the optimum level. So more often than not, we have to sit with them and educate them on what and how it should be read and designed.
Okay, that all makes a lot of sense. And actually, I want to pick up on you sort of sitting down and talking with people, because I want to understand what sort of technical support you offer to specifiers and fire engineers. And it seems that you are very keen on championing taking a more personalised approach and actually looking at specifically at each individual case as a one-off.
So we operate from the Middle East office, which is based in Dubai, and we cover roughly 20 countries from here. And each market has its challenges. Some markets are, let's say, well regulated, the others are less so. And every market requires a different level of support. Yeah. It's important that we understand that no two projects are the same. Every project has a distinguished requirement and a different level of support. Some projects could be that in a way that they're sort of generic, if it makes sense, a box-shaped or a rectangular-shaped curtain wall construction, or a cladding arrangement, which would not have a lot of challenges. However, the issue we face is fire engineers are not there in all the markets we operate. So, for example, in UAE, by default, you require a fire engineer to be signing off for each and every job. But for example, when you step into Asia Pacific for Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, etc., these markets don't have anyone looking after them. So it's the facade consultant with little to no knowledge of fire engineering that is present. So we really need to hold the hand, take them through the steps, ensure that compliance is met. We are quite often well regarded in the industry because we offer that approach. We also make sure that specification is done for all these consultants to the letter. So we give specification in templates in whatever format they want. Either it's a bill of quantity or it's a BOQ, or sometimes it's in the NBS, the UK format, or it's in a CSI, the American format. They would require text, sometimes even in their own regional languages, which we rely on our distributors to translate it to in that language and then submit it. But we would generally give it in English, and we make sure that we give the full 100% side rise confidence for each project.
And when you're talking about getting the approvals and everything is being checked, then it must be that the technical drawings, which are often a core requirement for specifications, are a very important part of this. Can SideRise offer any specific support?
Yes. To be fair, along with the initial early engagement that we mentioned, some of the information we always request from the consultant is to give us the drawing in advance. This is to make sure that we can detail a full tested system into their project design, and then they can give it to their contractor so that it's accurately quantified, and so that they don't take account for the wrong type of materials or do the costing for the wrong materials as well. And they make sure what is exactly required for the project design is what they are catering to. Doing the drawings to ensure that they do the accurate quantification is part of our services. We also have BIM models as part of our offering, and we offer them so that it can be incorporated into the architect's design.
Now, we've talked about the designers, we've talked about what you can do, but I'm wondering where manufacturers might come into this chain. How can they, for example, support collaboration between design teams and the contractors that are actually doing the work on site?
I'm glad you brought this up. So a manufacturer can design a test the optimum way possible, but however, if it is not executed in the way at the site in that same manner, then the design is sort of pointless, right? So the key role over here is inspectors, right? So what you need to ensure is you have accredited inspectors, either from the manufacturer or a third party that is present at the project site, who is ensuring that the project design is enforced at the site. Along with the inspectors, constant communication from a SiteRise personnel and the installer contractor at the site is key for that engagement to be present as well. Because what we do is every time we get a job, we make sure that we do a toolkit training, a product mock-up, and we do an installation inspection. But then after that inspection, we can't just leave them and go and hope that the project is installed right. So we have to make sure that every fortnight or so, we keep going back to the project to check if the installation is being done the SiteRise way. Another challenge we face in this part of the world is that the laborers that you train one day would not be there at the project site the next day. The people keep changing because labor is quite cheap in this part of the world. So they would go wherever they get paid more the next day or the week, if it makes sense. So it's important to make sure that that constant engagement is present to ensure that trained personnel are the ones executing the fire step installation as it's a life critical element.
And of course, when it comes to the actual materials that you're using, you could have two products that say they do the same thing, but the quality can vary massively. I'm thinking from the manufacturer's point of view, what would you advise them on how they can demonstrate their own technical expertise and due diligence?
From a manufacturer's perspective, third-party testing and certification for that testing is, well, I would say key to demonstrate their competence in the market. Now, what I would enforce in the market is that it is important to ensure that what is tested is exactly replicated at the project site. More often than not, we see materials substituted from what is tested. So, for example, if X companies, okay, I don't want to say a side rise in this instance, X company's drywall is tested, it is usually substituted to the Y company's drywall, assuming it gives the same performance. But you would never know until you have accurate data giving the comparative performance. So that it is important to ensure that what is tested is descriptively mentioned, prescriptively to be fair, and that is enforced and executed at site with those same components and same design.
And you mentioned the UK earlier, which is where I'm sitting at the moment, Donald, and you said that actually the UK standards are very high compared to some other countries in the world. And here, building and fire safety legislation is evolving rapidly. What lessons can other jurisdictions in which you're working and operating, what lessons can they take?
We have a mix over here, I would say, because we have a wide territory to cover. There's a mix of regulated and unregulated countries. Yeah. So UAE, for example, is a very well regulated country. However, probably even better regulated than the UK. But the challenge we face in the UAE is the enforcement of the regulation. So you can have the best code in the world, but if no one's really doing the fact checking or the verification on it, then it's pointless. And that is one issue. So along with that, there are certain countries that don't even have a proper fire code, like say, for example, Thailand, which is in process of drafting it. So what we do as SideRise is we sit in a lot of code committees and we ensure that we enforce the best practice possible. As we are a global company, we understand, and we are experts only in facade fire protection. So we ensure that what we know, we communicate adequately to the people that are writing the code so that the best practice is followed. International standards are being enforced in those countries. Australia is one example where there is something called as a cladding remediation that is happening ongoing currently after a few large fires. And in their cladding remediation pattern book, SideRise is referenced as a best practice guide. Similarly, in Korea, they didn't have they had a standard, but that standard was not the right standard for a curtain wall construction. And SideRise were approached to design an adequate test standard for the country, and we were able to do it. We were also the first manufacturer to achieve that third-party testing. So we do help where possible to ensure that unregulated countries become regulated, and regulated countries can get enforced for the regulation.
And so, in your opinion, what should be the approach for a solid fire-safe design when you consider the materials, the design, and all the technologies?
So the first point I would like to say for this is active and passive fire protection need to be given equal importance. More often than not, we see active fire protection given more importance than passive fire protection. And a lot of building codes in the world, even the US, to be fair, the International Building Code, give you exemptions if you have an active fire system in place. The challenge we face is passive fire stop systems can only be incorporated in the design and execution phase, and you only get one opportunity to do it right. So it is important that that opportunity is utilized to the fullest. And even those passive systems that are used should be tested, third-party listed, and the enforcement of that in the project should be representative of the materials that is used in the test itself and should not be substituted. That's what I would say is probably the solid and the best practice approach.
See, I told you he was an expert, didn't I? Thank you, Doc. That's been really fascinating. Thank you for your time on the Firecast today.
Thank you.
That is SideRise's Head of Technical and Compliance for Middle East, India and Asia Pacific. He's Donald Dippy. And as I say, I told you he's an expert, and we now all know a lot more about passive fire protection than we did a few minutes ago. That's it for today's Firecast. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Firecast is produced and presented by Paul Hutton and is an MDM Publishing podcast in association with International Fire Protection Magazine.